12 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Pursuant to the motion adopted by the House on May 26, 2020, Standing Order 1082, and the motion adopted on June 1st, 2020, the committee is resuming its study of the state of specific salmon with today a focus on the Big Bear landslide. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference. The proceedings are public and are made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Regular members know this by now, but as a reminder for the benefit of our witnesses who participate in the House of Commons virtual committee meeting for the first time, I should remind you all of a few rules to follow. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. As you are speaking, if you plan to alternate from one language to the other, you will need to also switch the interpretation channel so it aligns with the language you are speaking. You may want to allow for a short pause when switching languages. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. Should members have a point of order, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. If a member wishes to intervene on a point of order that has been raised by another member, I encourage him or her to use the raised hand function. In order to do so, you should click on participants at the bottom of the screen. When the list pops up, you will see next to your name that you can click raise hand. This will signal to the chair your interest to speak and will keep the names in a chronological order. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. The use of headsets is strongly encouraged. Finally, when speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. Should any technical challenge arise, for example, in relation to interpretation or a problem with your audio arises, please advise the chair immediately and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Before we get started, can everyone click on their screen in the top right-hand corner and ensure they are on gallery view? With this view, you should be able to see all the participants in a grid view. It will ensure that all video participants can see one another. I would like to welcome our witnesses today. With us are from the Fraser River Aboriginal Fisheries Secretariat, Greg Witzke, Operations Manager. From the Fraser Salmon Management Council, we have Darren Haskell, President. From Peter Kiewit Sons ULC, we have Ryan Tones, Senior Vice President and Western Canada District Manager, and as well Patrick Wilson, Western Canada Project Sponsor and Big Bear Landslide Project Manager. And of course, from the Stwetlam-Heitlum First Nation, we have Chief Patrick Harry. We will now go to Mr. Witzke for 6 minutes or less. I understand that you will be making your opening remarks in your own Indigenous language and translating for our interpreters. I would remind you that you still will have 6 minutes only, and I would ask you to speak loudly and clearly. And of course, when you run out of time or go a little bit over, I will interrupt to stop to enable everybody else to get in their time. And while I'm welcoming people, of course, I would as well like to welcome Miss May, member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Good to see you here at committee again, and hope you can join in as we go forward. We'll now start, of course, with Mr. Witzke. Time is yours.
Hello, everyone. Greg Witzke requests. My name is Greg Witzke. Kamuch to Sukwakakulu. I'm indigenous to the Shuswap Nation. I wish to express my gratitude to the steering committee for blessing me with this opportunity to openly discuss the state of the salmon and the impacts on the Big Bear landslide today. My role over the past year with the landslide, government to government remediation efforts has been to offer traditional knowledge, cultural protocols, and perspectives, and make sure Indigenous roles and voices are not lost in the efforts to help salmon get past the landslide. Mr. Chair, I trust that the information you are about to hear today will convince the Standing Committee that now is the right time to utilize the Committee's political influence to persuade government decision makers to take significant measures to protect salmon for generations to come. Pacific salmon have been impacted by natural disasters and man-made dangers since time immemorial, yet they have shown their resilience to endure. However, at no other time in history have salmon suffered a more imminent threat to their existence than that of today. There are no simple answers, of course, to address all the different complex impacts and cumulative effects surrounding the current poor state of the Pacific salmon. My witness appearance here today is intended to provide, from my ancestral wisdom, a viable solution to our growing problem. I was asked to appear today to give my opinion on the state of the salmon and the impacts of the Big Bar landslide. My opinion will come from ancestral traditional knowledge, which has taught me that when our Mother Earth is hurting, then we are hurting. And if we are hurting, we hurt others. If we don't do something to stop that hurt when we have the opportunity to do so, then we're not living up to our natural laws to protect and preserve our Mother Earth for 7 generations to come. Mr. Chair and distinguished committee members, I ask that you sincerely consider what I'm going to now address. The Department of Fisheries and Oceans has stated that even without any fishery impacts at all, some of the already endangered salmon stocks will not be able to rebuild without undertaking significant actions to protect them throughout their entire life cycle. The Big Bar landslide occurred at quite possibly the worst time in history. As while the 2019 forecast was moderate, the return turned out to be the lowest in recorded history. Unfortunately, this year's salmon returns are expected to be even poorer than last year. Back-to-back historically low returns are certainly not a good thing. These unnaturally low returns, compounded with the 2020 higher than average snowpacks, increased rainfall, and runoff, have exacerbated migration issues for the already dire straits of Pacific salmon. Add in the Big Bar landslide migration obstruction issue once again, and we have a complete recipe for disaster. We know something big and bad is happening, and you're likely thinking, what can we collectively do about it? I was shown at a very young age that Indigenous people were put here to ensure that all food and natural materials from our Mother Earth are for the continued survival of our way of life. Nowadays, we have rights entrenched in the Canadian Constitution that provide us with the priority access to fish. But more importantly, we have the responsibility to uphold those rights for all of humankind. We can't maintain those responsibilities if we can't participate in the process to safeguard these rights. Many Indigenous people in these contemporary times now have the skills and capacity to effectively co-manage salmon fisheries alongside our DFO counterparts. What we don't have with those rights and capacities are the same levels of funding, jurisdiction, and decision-making authorities that our partners in the different government departments possess. Meanwhile, Indigenous people are anticipated to play an instrumental role in the protection, management, and preservation of Pacific salmon, so steps must be taken to embed this responsibility into the policies, regulations, and laws that impact Pacific salmon throughout their life cycle. Therefore, I'm asking the committee to please provide direction to DFO in the form of the following recommendation. Utilize your strong political influence to persuade the powers to be to deliver equitable, A-based permanent funding support to Indigenous fisheries organizations like the Fraser River Aboriginal Fisheries Secretariat, which has just recently blended with the Fraser Salmon Management Council, so that we can effectively collaborate with DFO to ignite a culture change, as stated in DFO's 2019 reconciliation strategy. DFO was created to police Indian fisheries over 100 years ago in order to provide the non-Indian commercial fishery with increased unobstructed opportunities. As a result, systematic paternalistic values have been ingrained in DFO that need to be reconciled directly if we are to work together to protect Pacific salmon. If DFO indeed desires to build renewed nation-to-nation, Inuit Crown, and government-to-government relations with First Nations based on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership, then they must prove it by putting concrete actions to these words. That being said, I wish to applaud the FOPO for recently attempting to acknowledge this divide by signing the historic Fraser Salmon Management Collaborative Agreement on July 5th of 2019. To date, we have signed agreement, but we have yet to obtain permanent government funding to support, co-develop, co-implement the decision-making process, co-management, and administrative processes.
Thank you, Mr. Witzke. We're gone over time. Hopefully anything else you have to say. I know you've submitted notes for your opening remarks, so they'll be distributed to the members, and anything else hopefully will come out in the line of questioning. We'll now go to Mr. Haskell from the Fraser Salmon Management Council for 6 minutes or less, sir.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Darren Haskell. I'm the Natural Resources Director from Plaza Nation, which is located in the headwaters of the early Stewart Sockeye Run. I'm also the president of the Fraser Salmon Management Council, which currently has 76 member nations from along the Fraser and approach areas in BC. First off, I'd like to thank the Standing Committee for inviting me to speak today on the state of the salmon. Fraser River salmon have faced both environmental and human-caused obstacles during their migration to successfully spawn in their natal streams over the past probably 2 decades now. First Nations and DFO have had numerous discussions to make the best decision possible to ensure that salmon make it home. After over 10 years of discussion and negotiation, as Greg mentioned, we've signed a historic comprehensive management agreement that commits both First Nations along the Fraser and NDFO to work together to make these important decisions together and really make an example of provide a great example of good co-management. But we're working on implementing that agreement right now. So the state of the salmon in the Fraser River has been in trouble for many years, with many stocks of both Chinook and sockeye in danger of extinction. Nations have to really bear the brunt of many of these impacts on a yearly basis. For instance, in the island and approach areas, many nations that would like to access Fraser-bound sockeye and Chinook stocks are not permitted to fish while these stocks are passing through their respective territories. Once an opening is decided upon and the bulk of the stock has already passed, and their chance to get their food has passed with it. And in the Lower Fraser, some of the Lower Fraser families have had to push back their community fisheries year after year. Once when these families would be preparing to fish in April along the river, now they are pushed back to late June or even July before they can even get a net in the water. In the mid-Fraser, they have a mixture of stocks that are doing well and some that are not, and trying to decipher which stocks they can access is always an issue. And in some areas, the fishing is by dip netting only, and when dip netting, the water levels have to be a certain height, and in low water years they can't reach the river with their dip nets, and in high water years the fishing grounds may be too dangerous and the water too swift to fish safely. And the upper Fraser, we have to wait and hope that these upper Fraser stocks have made the sometimes 1,000-kilometer journey from the mouth of the Fraser in order for our people to have access to them, and we only have access to them if we know the stock is in a healthy abundance. And then these are already issues that we're facing, and then the big bar landslide happened, and some of these direct effects of the landslide have devastated community fisheries. We have elders that are so worried right now that they're worried that they won't remember the taste of salmon. And our people, we already have many social issues, including a high poverty rate, and a lot of families depend on these traditional foods not only as their healthy source of food, but as a way to keep their cultural practices alive. I'd like to kind of get more technical numbers here, and some hard numbers to think about. The sockeye returns for above the landslide are the early Stewart 2019 return. We only had 89 sockeye return out of a brood year of 10,096. That's 1% of that brood year. The early summer aggregate, which was only 33% of the 2015 brood year, and within that aggregate, the Bowen River Run had only 20 sockeye return out of a brood year of 3,868. That's less than 1% of a return. The summer run aggregate is 25% of the brood year, and the largest run usually in the summer run is a Chilko run, and that run had 168,000 return. But that sounds like a lot when you but not when you compare it to the expected return of over 600,000, which is 25% of the brood year. And our Chinook for 2019, we're facing for the upper and middle Fraser River spring Chinook an 85 to 90% loss of the run, and a 50% loss of the mid Fraser summer Chinook. So if the Big Bar landslide is not cleared to be passable for salmon stocks, many of these runs will definitely face extinction. I know that last year's cycle runs that many of them already have that risk. I would like to recommend that, overall decreased fisheries impacts for 2020 across all fisheries, like even prior to Big Bar, the Fraser stocks have faced pressure on all fronts, from commercial, recreational, and even First Nations. Due to their poor biological status, no fisheries impact should be inflicted on any of these stocks from above or below Big Bar unless the data shows strong returns to their natal streams. And in this case, a priority fishery should be considered. Recovery plans, which include enhancement plans, need to be developed for these at-risk stocks of Chinook, sockeye, and steelhead in order to ensure their survival. The Fraser Salmon Management Council has developed a board and a technical structure to facilitate the development of these plans. And also, furthermore, any proposals such as the mass marking and selective mark fisheries that have been presented previously should be vetted through this structure in order to ensure that conservation and FSC interests are addressed. I'd like to kind of reiterate my opening remark that our people are scared and worried that our salmon will not survive this ordeal. Our practices and techniques are not being passed to our future generations. I would like my children and their children's children to be able to go down to the smokehouse and prepare sockeye the way our grandparents did. I want them to learn that salmon is a part of our culture and then way of life. I want them to know that salmon comes from lakes and rivers and not from the back of a truck. And those are my closing comments. I'd like to say Tabecho Masi, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Haskell. You were spot on with the time. Now we'll go to Peter Kiewit and Sons. I don't know, Mr. Tones, if you're doing the speaking or if Mr. Wilson is, or if you're sharing it, but you have 6 minutes either for one of you or between you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. On behalf of Peter Kiewit Sons ULC, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about our role in this very important project. As Mr. Chairman mentioned, my name is Ryan Tones, and I am the Senior Vice President with Peter Kiewit Sons ULC, and also the Western Canada District Manager. I was born in BC, and I'm still proud to call it home. Big Bar is a very important project to me and my family. I grew up in Maple Ridge, and living so close to the Fraser, I inherently understand how iconic salmon is to the Canadian culture in general, and BC in particular. BC's ecosystem and fisheries rely on salmon abundance, while wildlife depend on them for survival. First Nations have a special relationship with salmon, and a healthy salmon population contributes greatly to their community's livelihood. Kiewit has completed many projects to help support BC's ecosystem since we started doing business in Canada in 1941. Some of these key projects include the Massey Tunnel, Sea to Sky Highway, the Portman Bridge, and numerous hydroelectric projects. Additionally, Kiewit has supported the Pacific Salmon Foundation for over 10 years now, not only through financial contributions, but more importantly by involving local stream keeper groups that are supported by the foundation on some of our marquee projects. In fact, these groups were consulted during the development of the compensation and restoration designs on the Port Mann project, resulting in improved fish passage and fish habitat at Brunette and Como Creeks in Coquitlam, BC. I reviewed the June 9th briefing on the government's response to the Big Bar landslide and would like to use my remaining time as an opportunity to summarize work completed to date and future work as it relates to cost, scope, and schedule. On December 31st, 2019, Kiewit was awarded the winter work contract for $17.6 million by Public Works and the Government Services Canada to remediate fish passage through the slide area. The contract called for us to remove as much of the slide debris as safely possible and to widen the narrowest point of the channel by drilling and blasting an outcrop known as the East Toe. This all had to be planned and executed before water levels rose in the spring freshet. Understanding the impact that the slide debris had on the 2019 salmon run, failure to execute was not an option for Kiewit. We were confident we had the right plan, personnel, and equipment to successfully remove the slide debris. However, we also carried out 3 parallel backup approaches to ensure success. Through the execution of our plan, we successfully gained equipment access to the slide debris and were able to address 14,000 cubic meters of rock within the channel, more than twice the projected scope in the bid documents. For scale, that's the equivalent of filling a hockey rink 10 meters high. Following this work, Kiewit was awarded additional scope to continue work through the spring and summer to design and build the bulk of the components to support the pneumatic fish transport system. The scope included building a work platform, reinforcing the access roads, flattening road grades, designing and installing additional rock fault protection to support the long-term use of the work area, constructing a lock block fish ladder, and the design and construction of the mechanical, electrical, structural, and communication system to support the fish ladder and the pneumatic fish transport system. Despite floodwater delays, we completed the work for the pneumatic fish transport system on July 16th, and I'm happy to report the system is operational, with the first fish running through the system on July 18th. The additional work performed during the slide debris removal and the additional scope of the implementation of the fish transport system brought the $17 million price to $56 million. Kiewit has recently been awarded additional scope to maintain the overall site management into October, as well as to provide site services and other deliverables to support DFO as it monitors and assists the fish passage during the 2020 salmon run. This additional scope increases the contract amount to an estimated $64 million. I'm extremely proud of what Kiewit and our subcontractors safely accomplished in such a short time. This feat would not have been possible without the engagement of all the partners on the project, including the High Bar and Canoe Creek First Nations, the multiple federal and provincial bodies, as well as the local communities. The caliber of the personnel from all these groups assigned to the project and the support provided from higher levels of governance was truly impressive. Everyone had one clear and common goal: restoring fish passage through the Big Bar landslide as safely as possible. This guided their decisions, and that has been the key to the success of the project thus far. Kiewit is honored to continue to be involved in this very important project, and I am personally proud as a BC resident on what we are collectively doing to protect the salmon migration. We thank you for this opportunity, and I hope you found the project insights I've shared with you today beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you for that again, right on time. Just a couple of seconds left to spare. We'll now go to Chief Patrick Harry for 6 minutes or less, please.
Wait up, Kupi Patrick Harry and West Swetchunghaitum First Nation. I thank you for taking the opportunity to meet with us here today and the opportunity to present in front of the Standing Committee on the Big Bar landslide recovery. I'm coming to you from Swetchunghaitum community on the banks of the Fraser River here today. Swetchunghaitum was made aware of the landslide at Big Bar just over a year ago, about 13 months ago, and this really hit our community hard and hit at the heart of our community, our communities, as we're made up of 2 communities. I should mention and introduce Swetchunghaitum territories, as we lie on the banks of the Fraser River, west of Clinton, BC, south of Williams Lake, BC. Swetchunghaitum has always relied on salmon fisheries as salmon fisheries have been the most important piece of sustenance for Swetchunghaitum people since time immemorial. When we were first notified of the slide and first engaged by the Crown and by Department of Fisheries and Oceans, our message was that the salmon fisheries have provided for Swetchum-Hyttam people since time immemorial, and any impact on those salmon impacts our identity. And so our discussion with DFO over the past year has been very productive. As mentioned by the previous speaker, that we knew that we had to work with some synergy on this project, and there wasn't a lot of time for differences here. You know, we have to work with synergy, and you know, this calls for unity. Over the past year, we've created a relationship with the prime contractor. We've created relationships on a government-to-government level with the Joint Executive Steering Committee, with DFO, with the province of British Columbia, and tried to move this recovery ahead as smooth as possible here, knowing that Swetchum-Hyttam people's identities rely on this recovery falling or carrying through. So over the past year, in August of 2019, we had a commitment from the minister around funding and consistent funding for the project, for the recovery project. And over the past year, I think we've seen a lot of support from government, and we expect that to continue. You know, Minister Jordan has made us aware that this project is of highest importance to the Crown, to Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and we're thankful for that. Our number one priority at Swetchum-Hyttam has been natural fish passage. I think that's something that we can all agree on, whether you work for DFO or you work for the province or you work for Swetchum-Hyttam or one of our delegated agencies here that are working so hard to make sure that these fish achieve natural passage. I think we can all agree that natural passage is the priority. And we have a long history of fishing, and our identity relies on it. And over the past couple of years, we've had very dismal years as far as fishing, and it is impacting our communities. It is impacting our youth. We've missed out on those opportunities to get down on the river and teach our sons, teach our daughters, and the grandparents have missed that opportunity to be down there, making sure that we pass our culture and our teachings on. And that's why we're trying so hard to play a significant role in this recovery and make sure that we achieve natural passage. You know, it looks like we're going to be placing some infrastructure down at Big Bar, and I wanted to mention that you know, we've been here before with the Hell's Gate landslide, you know, over 100 years ago. But we've been here before, and we found a solution at Hell's Gate, and I think we're heading down that same road where there's a need for a permanent solution, and Swetchum-Hyttam looks forward to participating through our Indigenous benefits plan. So our message to government, to the Crown, was that this landslide has the ability to affect and impact Swetchum-Hyttam First Nations title and rights. If there's negligence on behalf of the Crown to properly recover the Big Bar landslide, you know, that negligence could lead to an impact on Swetchum-Hyttam's right to fish, which we hold dearly. And that was the beginning. In those terms, that was the beginning of our discussion around how we wanted to be involved at the Big Bar landslide. And one of the options that was posed to us from Department of Fisheries and Oceans and the federal government was the Indigenous benefits plan. And over the past year, we've developed the Indigenous benefits plan with DFO and with Kiewit, and we've seen it. You know, we've made progress in the past year. We've developed a steady relationship with Kiewit, and we've developed a good relationship through our through the Joint Executive Steering Committee, and we've been able to bring capacity on board to have our community involved at all levels with regard to the recovery. But moving forward, we look for consistency, and we look to be further involved through our Indigenous benefits planning and through our current relationship on a government-to-government basis with the Crown, the federal Crown.
Okay, thank you, Chief Harry, Patrick. Patrick Harry, sorry about that. Your time has gone a little bit over, so hopefully anything you didn't have to say will come out in the line of questioning that will now follow. I would remind members that are asking questions to please identify who you're asking your question to. It'll make it a little better flow, I think, if you say the person's name that you would like to see answer the question, or if you want everybody to answer it, that's fine as well. So we'll start off, we'll go to the Conservative Party. Mr. Ranald, for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank all of the witnesses for being here today. I hear the commitment and the desire to restore our Pacific salmon stocks, and I share that desire, and I think every member on this committee shares that desire as well. I'm going to direct most of my questions to Mr. Haskell, if I may, at least to begin with here. Mr. Haskell, you've mentioned the collaborative or Fraser Salmon Collaborative Management Agreement, and that it has been signed off on, and that you're working on an implementation of that agreement. Could you elaborate on what that agreement means to you, your band, the bands that are involved with that agreement, what you see as the future in that?
Well, the future in it is real, true collaborative management. The whole intent of the agreement was to provide First Nations a role in this final decision when it comes to management of salmon. Previously, we've had sort of what we call the forum on harvest and conservation planning, and in that forum, First Nations did provide input, but they were always received as recommendations. They were never ever received as direct input into a final decision from the minister. So through the structure in the FSMC is that both First Nations and DFO together would present a final sort of recommendation to the minister on management decisions as it pertains to salmon in the Fraser River. And that's the role that First Nations have been fighting for like as I mentioned in my speech, for over 10 years. It started as a roadmap in 2009, and we finally came to a head in July of 2019 when we signed it with Minister Jonathan Wilkinson.
So it gives you the co-management responsibilities or decision process?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We feel it does, yeah, within the structure, yep.
Okay. As you know, you may know the Fisheries Act was changed last year to include references to authorities for Indigenous governing bodies. Is the Fraser Salmon Management Council considered an Indigenous governing body under the Fisheries Act?
Under the Fisheries Act, I would feel that we are, because each of our member nations requires their community's consent to be a member of our nation. We go direct to band councils to get our band council resolutions to appoint their member from their community as a part of our organization. And through that, we receive a mandate on their behalf to really bring these messages up all the way up to the decision makers, and that is our mandate, is to bring this is to bring their message right from the grassroots all the way to the decision making.
Okay, thank you. The changes to the Act also defined bylaws of Indigenous governing bodies to be laws under the Fisheries Act. Are you aware of this?
I think it's something we've began to discuss at our table, but we haven't gotten to any deep discussions.
Okay. Have any of the council's bylaws been put forward to be considered as law or application under the Fisheries Act?
Not that I'm aware of yet, no.
Okay. Are you aware of any other Indigenous bodies that have been recognized by the government or DFO as an Indigenous governing body?
Any other organizations in BC? not that I'm aware. The agreement that we've signed is pretty unique in the way that it's structured, and I think the intent was that we want to make this work so it can be kind of a model for other groups to really to use and getting to this step.
Okay. Since the signing of the collaborative management agreement, has the council been able to work with DFO and co-manage, in your opinion?
Fully, there have been discussions, but and that's kind of where we've hit some bumps in the road, is implementing this, because it is so unique that the First Nations, we got organized quite quickly. We signed our board members and our technical teams, whereas DFO had some troubles in assigning those members until very recently, actually. And in terms of our timeline, we were able to get our members assigned to those seats within the timeline, which was last November, I do believe, and DFO did not get their members assigned to the Fraser Salmon Management Board and our Joint Technical Committee until, I would say, 2 months ago, 3 months, just earlier this spring, I think. And so that kind of really put a delay in the actual collaborative sort of working relationship.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to provide the committee with a copy of the agreement?
I think so. I'm kind of looking at Greg's view over there. I think it's public knowledge right now, so I think we can.
Okay, if I could ask that be provided to the committee if possible. Time, Mr. Chair?
20 seconds less.
Okay. The collaborative management agreement was ratified by 80% of the signatory nations. Can you tell us why 20% of the nations may not have signed on to ratify the agreement?
At the time, like a few of them, they had mentioned they wanted to. They had hesitations in working with DFO. Basically, was their word back to us, and they wanted to see us really put this stuff into real work and see results of it, and before they would step forward. And some have just kind of gone through other elections, as you know, chief and councils go through different elections, and we've actually had to go back to some communities to kind of present our agreement again to the new council, so they knew what they were signed up for. So
thank you for that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Arnold. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here. So what we're detecting is a fairly high degree of success so far on what has been technically a very challenging situation. One of the issues that came up in some of our earlier hearings had to do with the survivability of the salmon that had been, if you like, mechanically moved from one side of the Big Bar barrier to the other side. Mr. Tones, maybe you're in a position to, given that you've seen some fish movement as recently as a couple of days ago, are we still in a situation where we're going to need fish cannons or helicopters or whatever to try and move the stocks around the barrier?
Yeah, I'll do my best to comment. At this time, water levels have still been quite high, so we haven't seen a lot of the migrations coming upriver yet. But I'll pass it over to Pat Wilson, the project manager for our Big Bar work, and maybe Pat, you could add a little bit of color to help answer that question.
Okay, yes, thank you, Ryan. And I apologize, I probably can't do a great job of answering the question. Really, our mandate as Kiewit on the project was to put the infrastructure in place and to really design and build the system and the support systems to feed this proprietary equipment that was provided by Whoosh. I think as Mr. Tones mentioned earlier, we did successfully remove a lot of the material that was in the river, more than anticipated. And we're hoping that the work that was done to date will yield good results, but it's too early to tell with the very low quantities of salmon that have gone through. And really, as the contractor, we're not really the experts to tell you that what has been done today will be a success or not, but we're we're very hopeful, and we'll continue to work with everyone to make sure that we do what we can to get the fish through.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Then maybe Chief Witzke or Chief Haskell or Chief Harry, you can comment on the work that's been done so far and your level of confidence that how close are we to allowing a reasonable number of fish to get by the barrier without some of these mechanical means, Chief Witzke?
Yeah, I'm a chief, but not elected chief. So they call me the fish chief back home here.
Right.
So a traditional hereditary chief. So I'm also the Indigenous project manager for the Big Bar Landslide Indigenous Engagement Committee. And I can try to answer your questions. The more those salmon get touched by human hands, the less chance they have of getting over the side. So all the scientists we've worked with, we're trying to get a system in place where we can get them over without touching them, without putting them in buckets or tanks. The phonetic tube or the whoosh trademark system that we have put in place and has successfully put one Chinook over this past weekend, it's the best way we found to get the salmon over the obstruction. We don't plan on using any helicopters last year. That was a very, very tough task last year. The salmon suffered immensely. They were already holding for a month below the slide, and then to be taken in a helicopter ride, which is not normal. They were falling back. They were dying.
But I guess the major part of my question is, how close do you think we are to the time when we don't need whoosh, we don't need anything, that the salmon will be able to, get up and back again through this obstruction without any human hands or any other means that they can? Is there a fish ladder? Is there something else happening there? Or how much more work needs to be done before we're ready to say, look, this is done and the fish can do what they naturally do?
Okay, that one I'll definitely answer. There is a fish ladder going to be needed, much like Hell's Gate. The water levels and the amount of rock deep in the river there, there's no other way. And that decision's already on the table to be hashed over amongst all the parties.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be looking at the government for the funding, of course.
Okay.
So
I'm looking at, it was interesting to hear some of the comments about the Management Council. This committee will be, after we finish specifically focusing on the Big Bar situation, we're going to segue into a broader discussion about the health of Pacific salmon stocks. Do you see the Management Council structure as being a good framework for the bigger conversation that we're going to need about how to actually restore the stocks to abundance?
I'll try to answer a little bit of that, and might also rely on President Darren to jump in.
Mm-hmm.
Being this is a unique council, Fraser Salmon Management Council is unique. It's never been done in the history of DFO, which I talked about. DFO was put in place for policing Indians. Our role is significant. Co-management equals survival. So right now we're struggling with the funding part of long-term funding for the council. Once that's in place, we have the capacity, we have the expertise, we have the skills, we just don't have the money. So we're ready to move forward.
Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Hardy.
Thank you.
Your time is up. We'll now go to Madam Gill for 6 minutes or less, please.
Sorry, the space bar didn't seem to be working. So hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi to all of our witnesses, especially today. I want to thank you for being with us. I really appreciated the points that you raised at the outset, especially Mr. Witzke giving us such a clear picture of the essential link that we have with our natural environment, of which we are such an integral part. And he also talked about what are really symptoms of the current situation, talking about the the water. And I would like to hear all of our witnesses talk, representing First Nations and our Indigenous people, about these situations that we see. We're talking about Big Bar here, but at the same time, we realize that this is on a much broader scale. We're talking about BC as a whole, really. What are your comments?
It's Mr. Witzke here. I can start off here. Well, BC as a whole, there is an organization that we work closely with, the First Nations Fisheries Council. It's led by Executive Director Jordan Point. He might have been a witness here in the past. We're Fraser Basin specific, the Fraser Salmon Management Council, so we deal with the headwaters out into the ocean area for Fraser salmon only. But we are poised to work with First Nations Fisheries Council. It's BC-wide, and we do work with them closely. Again, I hate to keep hashing on this, but funding is always an issue. Funding stops First Nations from fully participating in our rightful roles to protect the resources for everybody, not just First Nations, but children of fishermen who angle, commercial fishermen, bears, eagles, etc. That's all I have to add. If Darren might have something else as well. Thank you.
Well, yeah, when it comes to the FSMC and province-wide, I think that was the intention of us starting up just with the Fraser River, and you know what? It wasn't just the initial focus was on the management of salmon, but we had plans in terms of the developing this agreement and developing the organization that our First Nations would like to be involved along with fully in the rebuilding of the stocks. And as Greg mentioned, we do work with the FNFC, and we are developing an MOU with that group, with that organization, as we all like to be on the same page when it comes to doing projects. Because of the limited funding, as Greg mentioned, we all want to be kind of working on the same initiatives. If we're both doing the same thing and kind of spinning our wheels and really not utilizing the money to its fullest extent, I think that's the most important thing about us being in BC, about the First Nations organizations in BC. So that open dialogue that really happens is really important. So.
Merci.
Thank you. Actually, I don't know if Chief Harry also had something to say.
Donc, je vais
So then I'll continue on. You talked about funding, and I understand that is the cornerstone of your work. I looked at the details of what you hope to see done, and I'm interested in finding what the contribution is with traditional and ancestral knowledge, and what you can give into DFO. So for funding, if you could give us an idea of how much funding is required, what types of amounts are necessary in order to get all of this work done in the way that it needs to be done. I think that you're talking about your operating budget for the organization and not specific budgets for specific works for salmon. Is that right?
So I'll just answer quick before Greg. So the funding that we're speaking about right now is part of our our Fraser Salmon Management Board and the technical committee itself. We do have some technical experts that are part of those committees that do require a lot of work, and to be honest, biologists aren't cheap, and they do then the work that they do is specific to salmon. So it is important to really be able to have that technical expertise at that as a part of this group. So in order for us to make the proper decisions, we need those technical people.
Did you want me to step in and mention a few comments?
Yeah, Greg. Go
Yeah. Well, my speech got cut off about 30 seconds because I guess it was too long. But anyway, in the inclusion of our Indigenous knowledge, it's essential to the success of these types of agreements, but that information isn't cheap. It needs to be resourced similar to the acquisition of biologists' scientific knowledge, Western knowledge. And that kind of answers where our traditional knowledge component would come into place, because we have to bring it from the elders. It has to be from the communities. It has to be from the language speakers, the resource users, and the knowledge holders themselves, the fishers, the hunters, the gatherers. So it's not as simple as just asking one person on a committee. You have to involve the whole community, and that's my part about the traditional awareness.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you, Madam Gill. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 6 minutes or less, please.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony, for your deep commitment to addressing this issue and the issues surrounding the impact that's happening on the Fraser River. Maybe I'll start with you, Mr. Witzke, because you're just on a thread that I just wanted to go to. You talked about Indigenous and traditional knowledge and the lack of resources to be able to get that information. I mean, the government constantly cites the importance of Indigenous and local knowledge. Without those resources, do you feel confident that that Indigenous and traditional knowledge is being used in this situation and applied to help resolve the situation?
Frankly, no. There's not enough funds available to provide a full traditional knowledge. We can scrape the top off the butter, but we can't dig in deep with the knife. That's a kind of a funny way of putting it, but yeah, there's seriously not enough funds, and for the amount of resources out there, there should be funds available, the amount of resources extracted. And thank you.
Do you want to add to that, Mr. Harry, Chief Harry? Because I think that this might be something that you might also touch on. You touched about rights and reconciliation, rights and title, the importance of, I think the government hasn't resolved some of the outstanding issues related to rights and title, and the importance of those issues, outstanding issues with the Crown getting resolved, so that there is resources to better manage the stocks. I mean, I come from New Chalmette territory, and you're probably very aware of the New Chalmette court case where the government spent $19 million just on lawyers fighting the New Chalmette on rights that we know that they've already established in the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Can you speak about how that's relative in terms of resources here?
Thank you. Thank you. I've also taken part in the Fraser Salmon Management Council meetings, and my community is a delegated representative at the Fraser Salmon Management Council meetings. And as Darren mentioned, whether or not the Fraser Salmon Management is a delegated authority, I want to say that there's been a lot of commitment in as far as the 190 First Nations that rely on the Fraser River salmon. At this point, we have about over a third of those signed on to the Fraser Salmon Management Council, and that's a huge success. I would say to have that amount of signatories to that agreement, and that shows the commitment on behalf of the BC First Nations to look to recover the salmon stocks, the Pacific salmon stocks. It's not an easy task to get that many First Nations on board, and it shows that First Nations are fully committed. I'm sure that we'll have more come on board here over into the next little while here. But this conversation that we're having really goes back to the Crown's mandate, and the nice gestures, the nice words that we've been hearing over the past 4 years here with Prime Minister Trudeau around recognition, reconciliation, supporting UNDRIP. When we think about implementing UNDRIP, we think about passing on some of that responsibility that the Crown has held so dear to its heart and Department of Fisheries and Oceans has held so dear to its heart for so long. If you want to implement the United Nations Declaration, or you want to look to implement some of the court decisions, we have an opportunity with the Fraser Salmon Management Collaborative Agreement. That's the fundamental step that needs to happen for us to be able to properly resource the traditional knowledge, title, and rights discussion. Is that some of the responsibility needs to be passed on to the First Nation, and I think that's probably being debated somewhere in Ottawa at this time as to how to do that. But that's what we want, is we want responsibility with regard to First Nation fisheries, or regard to fisheries on within the Fraser River watershed. I think that those discussions are coming, and we need to take them serious. When I look at that Fraser Salmon Management Collaborative Arrangement, it is a step towards First Nations taking on more responsibility as far as salmon, and it's a long time coming. We can look to tools such as that agreement to improve our place with regard to management of a salmon stock that means so much to our identity as Secwepemc people.
Super. Part of the contract with Kiewit is to obviously hiring local Indigenous people and ensuring that they're part of that process. Can you speak to them fulfilling that commitment, Mr. Witzke? Can you speak about that? Chief
Yes,
Witzke?
I can answer. I can answer that question. Currently, we have local First Nations from Statliam, which is the part of the Fraser, and then also the Secwepemc, which is the Shuswap part of the Fraser. So it's a collaboration of different two nations, and the individual bands within those nations have provided contractors, managers, technicians, security, all types of the work needed at the landslide. Not just the landslide itself, but the work to follow in the monitoring and assessment of the returns of the salmon back to the northern streams in the fall, if we're successful or not to determine. Also, we're involved with engagement with myself in the engagement activities, and a committee of First Nations who also involve the First Nations Leadership Panel, which is a consortium of leaderships across the whole Fraser Basin who make are part of the decision-making process for the landslide remediation. So,
thank you, Mr. Witzke. That's all your time, Gord. It's gone a little bit over. We'll now go to our second round of questioning. We'll go to Conservative Party. Mr. Bragdon, for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses and fellow committee members who are on the call today. And obviously, the importance of these issues that are facing us and the challenges that are facing us in the fishery sector are huge at this time. And obviously, as it relates to the depleting salmon stocks from coast to coast, being from the East Coast, obviously the Atlantic salmon stocks and their decline for the wild Atlantic salmon is a big concern for us as well here on the East Coast. So we share that, and I thank you for being a part of the discussion today and bringing much needed focus onto this challenging area. I want to address the first question to Chief Patrick Harry. Just wondering, it says, according to DFO's timeline for the Big Bar project, archaeology work at the slide site commenced on December 10th. Chief Henry, was your administration consulted on this archaeological work?
Thank you. Yes, it's Cook P. Patrick Harry. Yes, the site at Big Bar is a very very important and very sensitive site to Stretcham-Hypton First Nations. For those who have been lucky enough to visit the site, you definitely get a picture of why that site would be so dear to our people. It's that site down there has shown through the archaeological work to be a very sensitive archaeological, culturally sensitive area. Part of the, I think, part of the challenge with this project is definitely the amount of players in the game, and the planning portion of this project, means that sometimes work has to happen quick. And we find at Swetchum-Hytem that we are towing the line as far as consultation occurring. We've said that natural fish passages is our number one priority. But when you're dealing with free and prior informed consent, there's definitely a path for that too. Swetchum-Hytem has really put its efforts and into playing a very important role with regard to the Big Bar landslide recovery. We have a process in place at Swetchum-Hytem First Nation with regard to our land use policy and our consultation accommodation guidelines, and we're towing the line because of timelines, because of Mother Nature. I don't think it's been mentioned as of yet how much Mother Nature has played a role in this recovery. And when we start to talk about timelines, we should definitely pay attention and be mindful that Mother Nature is in charge here. Mother Nature has definitely impacted this project, and there's been times where Swetchum-Hytem has made some decisions in a faster manner or quicker manner than we usually would, but we are consulted, definitely. We've through the Indigenous benefit planning, we've been able to have an archaeologist on the ground, and through our next period here, we will be renegotiating our Indigenous benefits plan, and we plan on including the cultural heritage resource support within that plan, and we plan on continuing to build synergy within this project. As we can see the amount of people on the screen here today, and I'm sure there's another 200-300 behind the scenes that are working with this project. It's important we create synergy, and
well, thank you, Chief. Thank you. And obviously, so the archaeological work is going on. I'm just wondering, are you aware of what the outcome of the archaeological work has been? Like, has there been some conclusive findings to that? And do you feel that there's still a pathway forward here within a timely fashion to get to the desired solution for everyone?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Well, really, we don't have a choice.
Yeah,
we have to get this done. My nation's identity relies on this, and that's always been the basis for our discussion with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Is that my nation lies on the banks of the Fraser for a reason. Mm-hmm. These salmon have been feeding my people for generations, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those salmon. We're placed in this part of the world because of the salmon, and as far as my nation is concerned here, we don't have a choice. We have to get this done, mm-hmm. or our identity will be affected. And I can see the path forward. Mm-hmm. We've come to a conclusion recently that we're looking at a permanent solution, and our community has supported the fish passageways. Which is probably one of a few options we've had over the past year. That the project has moved at a high speed, and times we could probably tighten up on some of those lines of communication and decision-making structures.
So,
thank you,
Chief
thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Your time has gone way over. We'll now go to Mr. Batiste for 5 minutes or less, please.
Well, I just want to say at the outset that I will be sharing my time with MP May from the Green Party. But before I pass it on to you, I would like to just acknowledge the chiefs and technicians for their time. As a Mi'kmaq from Nova Scotia, I remember studying the Sparrow decision in law school and knowing how important that case meant to Indigenous fisheries all across Canada. And for that, I thank you. And I'm also looking forward to hearing more about the culture change you'd like to see within DFO, as you call it. But at this point, I want to give time to MP May to ask her questions. Thank you.
Walalin, thank you so much, Jamie. So generous of you. I'm on traditional territory, I acknowledge, of Wasanich people, the Coast Salish peoples of the Saanich Peninsula. I'm going to try to focus my question and ask it of Mr. Tones, but I want to preface it and make sure I've understood key points from Mr. Witzke and from Chief Patrick Harry, which is what I've heard from you is that we need a permanent solution like Hell's Gate, which means that we're looking at fish ladders at this point more than removal of rock. I mean, Hell's Gate happened in 1915, and it took until the 1960s to develop a permanent solution with fish ladders and fishways, and that did end up working. I just want to know from Chief Harry and from Mr. Witzke, have I properly understood the key points you made about what it will take to recover, if we can recover from this disastrous slide? To Mr. Witzke first.
Thank you. That was a key point. The work to remove rock will take decades. Fish ladder could take a year to 2 years.
Okay.
The fish don't have the time.
So, Chief Harry, is that your position as well?
Thank you. Like I mentioned, it's a challenge. We have Mother Nature who's playing a serious role in this project, and I believe that the permanent solution, and I rely on the professionals that have been giving us the professional the ideas here, and I believe the fishways can be a solution, but I also want to make sure that we don't forget about that rock recovery, because ultimately that rock recovery is going to be fundamental to a long-term solution here. There was 75,000 cubic meters on the floor of the river, and there's still a lot there. That I don't want to see that rock recovery taken off the table, but yes, a permanent solution would be the fishways, and we're relying on that.
Thank you so very much, Haishka. I want to then turn to our engineer with the Kiewit ULC Corporation, and I know Mr. Ryan, Tones, I know you've been recipient of initially 17 million, and the costs have skyrocketed to 52 million, and I'm wondering, is the mandate and the terms of work, the scope of work that your company has right now, is it restricted to removal of rock, or is there any portion of it that's designated for now's the time to start figuring out how to build fishways? And I hear you, Chief. Chief Harry, we don't want to abandon getting the rock out of the river, but it seems to me we better start figuring out how to build those fishways because it's urgent. What does your contract ask you to do?
Thank you for the question. The contract has evolved over time. When it first started and we won the contract for the $17 million worth of scope, as you mentioned, it was for removal of a portion of the rock in the river. And we were able to successfully execute that and remove more than anticipated. I believe I mentioned approximately 14,000 cubic meters was addressed in the river of the total rock that's down there. And then, as you understand from the Mother Nature comments, water levels are coming up, and that rock removal operation was paused at that time. Then we were asked to price and build additional scope around what was described as the whoosh system That was approximately this $30 million scope to do the mechanical transportation over the remaining rock. And this third piece that I mentioned in my opening remarks is really about follow-on site management to help as we collaborate and discuss what's the next step. We do not have any scope to do a permanent fish ladder at this point or some of the other things that are being brainstormed. I'd just like to say on behalf of the company, if those things are interest to the committee and to DFO down the road, we are absolutely open to discuss them and help the situation.
I appreciate the time. Thank you all very much for your hard work to help our salmon. It's critical. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. May. We'll now go to Mr. Calkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to start with my questions to the gentleman from Kiewit. In your opening comments, Mr. Tones, you said that you were building infrastructure to support long-term operations. And I'm just wondering if you're not building fish ladders, is the whoosh system considered to be one of the long-term operational aspects that you have been asked to design infrastructure to support?
No, the whoosh system I don't believe to be a long-term solution.
So if that's the case, then what was the long-term stuff that you're talking about then?
Yeah, thank you for the question. There was two elements that I believe are long-term that are being completed on the site. One is the rockfall protection, and it's an active slide area, and to protect workers, people that are down in that area, we've hung a series of rockfall mesh and protection for workers that'll be able to last and stay longer term. In addition, when we were working our way back out of the riverbed as the water levels rise, we were able to build a portion of a natural fish ladder on the one bank of the river that would stay long term.
Okay, so the question I have for you then, I'll get back to the fish ladder thing in a second. Next question I have for you is about hydrology. Did you have a before and after picture of the hydrology of the river after you removed the, I believe it was 14,000 cubic meters of rock, which I think was a number that you said exceeded what the original expectation was. Did you, I mean, obviously, from an engineering perspective, you would have looked at the hydrology to maximize whether it's blasting out the eastern toe or the larger chunks of rock. Did you strategically go after specific areas of the river, or did you just go what the easiest stuff was to get at? And did you have a before picture of the hydrology and an after picture? Was there a target of the hydrology or of the current that you were looking for in order to enable fish passage? And were you able to achieve that if that is indeed what you were actually trying to do?
Yeah, Kiewit's contract was an execution at the start, not a design basis. The initial design hydrology was done through the client, and so there were targets set of certain boulders, of certain portions of the rock in the river that needed to be removed. So absolutely, there was targets to go get those key pieces that the group felt would make the most impact to the hydrology. Once that was achieved and the water level was still low enough, the group collaborated on next areas to focus and remove as much rock as possible before levels came up. And then hydrology work was done to map out how much rock had been removed.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would suspect that we would have to get the answers for fish passage from the department, so I'll wait for them to get back before the committee for that type of question. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, have you guys built any fish ladders before in any of your previous work in British Columbia?
In British Columbia, we do fish ladder work around hydroelectric operations. Yep. We've been involved with independent power, etc. So yes, sir.
So in those particular scenarios, there's usually a fairly defined water level at the bottom and a fairly defined water level at the top. In this particular case, you don't know where the water level is going to be based on the freshet and runoff and melts and rainfall and so on. What kinds of unique issues like that are you able to create solutions for? How are you going to create a solution for not knowing how high the water level is going to be at the bottom of the ladder and not knowing where the water is going to be at the top of the ladder? How are you going to manage that?
Yeah, at this time, that is not currently part of our scope. We haven't been asked to be
Oh.
part of the design or build of the permanent fish ladder.
And no conversations or discussions about that at all?
Not for a permanent fix at this time, but given the opportunity by the committee, DFO, etc., we'd be happy to collaborate with the group here or the First Nations involved to find that design and solution.
So the only two solutions really that the department has invested money in through you are one, removal of the rock structures, and two, the setting up the infrastructure to support the pneumatic system. Is that correct?
That's mostly correct. As I mentioned, we also had done some work on the permanent rockfall protection as well as a portion of the natural ladder. And I'm happy to pass it over to Pat Wilson, the project manager, if there's more scopes, Patrick, that I'm missing.
So
sorry, the time is up, Mr. Calkins.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Now we'll go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to get back to our Indigenous folk, and it's really good to have you guys here because we're getting a glimpse of things, not just with the current situation, but my focus and my interest is in what goes beyond this particular project. You know, the Management Council, the Collaborative Management Council, it's a great title. It would be nice to think that that structure would survive beyond the permanent resolution of the big bar issue into work that we need to have done to come up with more permanent solutions to the greater issues, habitat, all of the things that are affecting the health of salmon stocks in British Columbia. And you mentioned that, resources were a big thing. Our government, has invested a lot of money back into the DFO, into science and everything else. But in some of our earlier studies, we've also recognized that, the people who live on the ground in the community are a resource that we have not marshaled, not mobilized. So you talked about resources necessary to get the current work done, and then perhaps the resources necessary to keep moving forward. Can you put a dollar and cents to that? Because that it all comes down to that, obviously, and the kind of investment that's necessary to make sure that the effort that we've seen so far, first of all, works in the current project, but can also translate into future work to help us restore the stocks. Can you put a dollar figure on what you think it's going to take on an ongoing basis, not just a one-time hit?
Well, I can provide an example of this year's proposed budget was to include our Fraser Sound Management Board, our Joint Technical Committee, as well as our Fraser Sound Management Council main table directors. It's worth a combined $757,000. That's just to work on the management piece of it. But I'm just looking at some of the correspondence from our executive director that I think we're about $200,000 short of that. But when it comes to habitat and rebuilding, like large infrastructure projects like that, you can easily get into long-term projects that can surpass millions potentially. But to really say that anything specific on those. So.
There we go. Okay, no, I appreciate that, Mr. Witzke or Chief Harry. Any additional comments?
I was going to let the chief go first, but I could add one additional comment. Well, Big Bar landslide is probably ending up around close to 100 million by the time we're finished here, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's an equal partnership, equity based, 33% should be for First Nations involvement in the future for other reasons, habitat and traditional knowledge and political engagement and everything. That's my personal point of view.
Okay.
But I think a lot of other people will support that. Thank you.
Chief Harry, any comment from you?
Yes, I will comment. As mentioned earlier, I'm a part of the delegation with the Fraser Salmon Management Council, and have been our nation has been very supportive of the Fraser Salmon Management Council and the collaborative work that has been taking place. You know what the challenge that we face in BC is we have a large number of First Nations. I think we have over 200 First Nations, and you know part of the challenge is you know having consensus decision making a power, and maybe you know that is one of the biggest positives with the organization is to have you know the number of First Nations on board with the organization, so we can hash these things out and figure out what the dollar figures are. It's a challenge to put the dollar figures to some of these, but you know we collaborate as First Nations with the Crown and do our best to come up with solutions as the Fraser Salmon Management Council and the First Nations on board, Upper Fraser Fisheries Salmon or Conservation Alliance. These various bodies are looking to find those answers. We may not have them right now, but we're challenged to come together and find those answers. I'm sure we can do it.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We'll now go to Madame Gill for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I would have a question for Mr. Haskell. We've heard a lot about financing right now, and for First Nations, they're talking about the survival of their cultural identity as well as protecting the salmon because of the salmon's role in their culture. With the landslide in Big Bar, what effect is this having on band councils and band council budgets? Because there's often a ricochet when some situation like this happens for the Fraser Salmon group.
You know, when a landslide like this happens, is we instantly have to go and find money, basically, to bring food to our community. I mean, it's happened for us 3 out of the last 4 years, and you know, it's money that's not dedicated funding. We have to search in other different areas to try raise funds to really go out of the community to bring fish to our people. And that's why I was mentioning in my speech was that I don't want our kids to know that salmon comes out of the back of a truck, and rather than them fishing on the lake, right? So that's a big hit. Like and when for a community that we have, our community here of about 600 people, we can easily spend close to $20,000 on a load of salmon just to feed our people. And that's if we find people that have access to salmon. So we've in the past we've worked with the Skeena nations on the Skeena to make an agreement with them to provide salmon for our people. And but even in the Skeena, they're facing some really tough times with their runs kind of starting to diminish as well. So yeah, we don't have any dedicated funding for any kind of additional food. And we usually have to go kind of looking for donations, any kind of surpluses we may have, and permissions from our funders as well to use some of that fund. So.
Thank you, Madame Gill. There's only about 3 seconds left, so hardly enough time for a question. We'll now go to Mr. Johns for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
My question, Mr. Tones, you talked about we talked about the need for fish ladders and more fish passage. Can you speak, and I know it's kind of hard to have that broad conversation, how quick you could get a fish ladder or fish passage, more further fish passage mechanisms in place in the site?
Mr. Johns, are you referring to a permanent solution or
Yeah,
more
or
of the
even
temporary?
for this season and then beyond?
Yeah, this season, as I mentioned, the whoosh system is in place. I think just from I've been to the site and seen it on a practical basis. I think starting a fish ladder right now, a permanent one, would be a real challenge with water levels. I think you'd have to do design starting immediately and then get to a position where you could start construction when low water happened later this year and through the winter. So I would be encouraging a design starting pretty quickly.
Right. Thank you. This is a question, Mr. Haskell. Thinking beyond Big Bar and regarding the state of Pacific wild salmon, we hear that the need for restoration and habitat protection is upwards of $250 million just over the next 5 years, and the BC Shrift Fund is not even just over half of that they've allocated for the next 5 for the whole coast of British Columbia. We know the Cohen Commission has recommended removing open net salmon farms on migration routes for juvenile salmon and migrating salmon because of PRV and sea lice and die-offs. We know that foreign fishing licenses, the concentration of quota with commercial fleet in foreign hands is having an impact on conservation. Can you speak about these issues and how important it is that the government address these issues?
I think it's hugely important because, speaking on the Cohen Commission, there's not one single smoking gun on the issues of salmon. And one of the things that we've always wanted was more monitoring further out of our migrating species, right? We do know that our fish go past Haida Gwaii and they do access through fisheries there, and that they do hit landfall up in Alaska, and we don't know if Alaska's being truthful on the amounts that they catch from us. Another thing is the habitat portion of it, is that we've been pushing for habitat dollars for years and years, and a lot of the proposals that we submit get sent back because they're not approved or they're not considered a priority, which we kind of scratch our heads thinking. Speaking on that one of the things that we had started prior to the landslide was we finally got approval after about 4 or 5 years of lobbying for small scale enhancement projects and some of the smaller streams up in the Upper Fraser. We finally had approval for that prior to the Big Bar landslide hitting. So we were making sort of small steps in that direction, but there a lot more is needed. And those are the questions that our chiefs and our councils are asking: is are we going to have to step towards hatcheries and other means like enhancement means to even just achieve getting our fish back? So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haskell. Thank you, Mr. Johns. That's your time is up. I will say to the committee members, we've got a few minutes left. We could probably do one question to each party, minute question, minute answer, and we'll have to be strict on our time to make sure everybody gets it in before we go into some committee business. So, Mr. Arnold, if you'd like to go first for 1 minute question and a 1 minute answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try and keep this really quick. Mr. Haskell, again, I'll go back to you. Under the management agreement, what role is your organization provide in the management decisions on entire Fraser River salmon? Are they able to provide input and be part of the decision-making process for operations in other geographical areas and decisions such as selective fishing gear, season openings, predator management, and other stressors that the fish may encounter that migrate into your territories?
Not right at the moment. We're really focused more on the management in river right now. We do have in sort of parts of the agreement that really point out things like the Fraser River panel needs to require at least 50% First Nations members, which the minister agreed to. But those are areas that we're looking to broaden our scope to once we've got this management side of things down. We didn't want to bite off too much at once. We want to focus on one thing and do it really well, and then expand to other areas within the fisheries.
Thank you.
Mr. Hardy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. very quickly, we've seen this slide, and I wanted to check who can speak to the risk of further slides, either at this location or at other locations, given the geography of that particular area. Are we going to have to be more vigilant and maybe preemptive when it comes to the possibility of future slides? We'll start with Kiewit and then perhaps with one of our First Nations.
Yeah, I think the area is currently an active slide, so I think we have to be very cognizant in the current area. I'll just ask Pat Wilson to jump in quickly if there's any adjacent sites you're aware of, Pat.
No, again, Ryan, that's really not in our purview or expertise to look at that or be able to comment on it. But yes, it is a very deep canyon with significantly high rock walls, and we do observe rockfall in the general area along the canyon as we're working.
I do have one comment to provide for that. Funny they asked because we were just approached the executive steering committee from the Fraser Basin Council about partnering on an assessment of possible slide sites along the Fraser River. We're researching. We think we know of a university study that identified 75 possible further sites along the canyons in the Fraser River. Only thing about doing that, you got to look at it for every river in the province. But it is being looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Now to Madam Gill for a very short question, short answer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for clarification from Mr. Tones. You said earlier when we asked the question about salmon, whether it usually worked well, you said, well, we're not specialists, you said. So I'd like to know in what context that was said exactly, because it seemed a little strange to me, a little odd. So I'd like to understand what you meant by that. Thank you.
Yeah, our contract scope to date has all been about construction needs and methods and how to remove rock from the river and then install this whoosh system. The whoosh system, I think, was what we were referring to, and we've brought in an expert that's proprietary to that system to make sure it's operated properly.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Gill.
Thank you.
Mr. Johns, for a short question, please.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Witzke a question, so I'm going to try to keep it to 20 seconds to give him more time to answer. He cited that last year was the half of the lowest return in recorded history of the Fraser River sockeye, and asked a similar question to Mr. Haskell about the need for restoration and enhancement dollars and habitat protection. Can you talk about how much is flowing right now and what is actually needed, especially in light of the very few stocks that are going to make it through the slide, and how critical it is that we get started on that work immediately?
Good question. If you're talking funding wise, how much is needed? Well, it's almost a bottomless bucket right now. Or we're looking at extinction. That's never been this low. We've never had such a run-in record. So I can't put a specific dollar amount, but what's worth more, money or salmon? I don't know, Darren, if you have anything to add?
No, like I mentioned, it's going to take millions. Basically, that's it. It's the number of projects proposed around the province. It adds up quickly, and hard labor is what it's going to take out there. So.
Thank you, Mr. Johns, and I want to say thank you to our witnesses who appeared today and for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and the very issue that's taking place there at Big Bear. Delighted you were able to join us. We're going to take a minute now for our witnesses to sign off as we go into a very short bit of committee business. So once again, thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Cook Jam, thank you.
Okay. Merci. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Merci
Cook's Jam.
Okay, we're back. Of course, as we know, the committee adopted in June that we meet twice in July and twice in August. We know that in August, the schedule adopted is Tuesday, the 11th, and Thursday, the 13th. Of course, as a committee, we have to decide now which studies or which will be used for these two meetings. I don't know if anyone would like to make a suggestion to the committee on what they would like the committee to do for these two meetings in August. And I will just add, I guess, for the Pacific salmon study, the motion indicated no less than 6 meetings. Once we have Thursday's meeting done, we will have had 4 of those 6 meetings. So I just want to get some direction so as we can start planning, the analyst and clerk and everything can start planning for witnesses going forward and not leave it to the last minute. Mr. Hardy, I see you had your hand up.
I did indeed. I actually wouldn't count the big bar sessions as part of the Pacific salmon study, Mr. Chair. We set aside a specific number of meetings to handle big bar, and then it was my thought that we would then segue into the Pacific salmon study because it's far, far bigger in scope than the big bar issue.
I believe the original motion did say that the big bar is part of the salmon issue as well. So unless the committee is going to change the timelines going forward, we did indicate in discussing it at that time that the big bar issue is part of the whole salmon issue on the West Coast.
Yeah, no,
salmon.
Yeah, my thought on that was that certainly what we heard from the big bar could help inform or could be added to the Pacific salmon study. But based on then a rough calculation, we would have 2 more meetings to deal only with the rest of the salmon issue. Don't think that's quite enough, sir.
Okay, going back, it said at least no less than 6, so it can be more than that. That's the decision of the committee. The committee didn't limit it to the number of meetings it would hold on Pacific salmon. It just said no less than 6. All I'm saying is that if, for example, we dedicated the next 2 meetings there, we would have reached 6. That's not saying we have to cut it off at that point. Mr. Johns.
Yeah, thank you. It was my understanding we were doing 2 sessions on Big Bar, and we were going to come back with recommendations to the department, and that we were doing 6 separately on Pacific salmon. So that was my understanding, that these were going to be separate, and that we needed to hurry and get back to getting Big Bar out of the way and getting something back in terms of suggestions to the department to get moving on Big Bar. And we just heard from Mr. Tones about the need to get started on fish ladders now if we're thinking next year. I don't think we can wait until we finish the salmon study, and I actually saw them as very different. That was my understanding.
Okay, again, I will say the committee didn't handcuff itself with 6 meetings. It said no less than 6 meetings. So we can certainly add meetings for the Pacific salmon study. That's no problem. My intent here today is to find out what we want to do for the next 2 meetings, which will be held in August, the 11th and the 13th. Do we continue on with Pacific salmon, or do we go to something else? That'll be the will of the committee. Mr. Arnold. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would support continuing with the Pacific salmon study for the next 2 meetings in August. And between now and then, we can possibly have some discussions or email exchange to guide on where we go from there.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Mr. Morrissey?
Mr. Chair, have we exhausted the list of witnesses on salmon?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So then we would have to. So we have some that are currently available for the next scheduled meetings.
Yes.
So therefore, if members now hear opinion from Mr. Hardy and Mr. Jones, if that they're going to require more, then we probably should consider additional witnesses.
Okay. So am I hearing a consensus that we continue on the next two meetings at least for Pacific salmon? And that way we can, if people have witnesses they want to submit, get them into the clerk, and we can start lining up those witnesses for those two meetings.
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right, I'm hearing consensus, so that's what we'll do for the next two meetings. Nancy, I don't know if there's anything else from the clerk's end that you want to mention?
Yes, on a procedural standpoint, in order to respect the order of the House, decisions have to be taken by recorded vote. So if it's correct with you, we'll proceed with a recorded vote.
Okay, we'll have a recorded vote, and the idea that we continue on with specific salmon for the next two meetings, one to be held on August 11th, the second to be held on August 13th. We'll continue on with study on Pacific salmon. So Nancy, I'll ask you to call the recorded vote.
Mr. Baptiste. Mr.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Brettina.
Yes.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey.
Yes.
Mr. Arnold.
Yes, I'd also like to state that after Thursday, I believe we still need 3 meetings on the Pacific salmon to satisfy the study motion. So
Okay.
after this Thursday.
I'm sorry, Mr. Arnold, we're into a vote on a motion.
Okay. Agree with August, the 2 August meetings being on salmon. Then I will speak after. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you very much. So back to the vote to study Pacific salmon in August. Mr. Brandon.
Yes, in favor. Yes.
Mr. Calkins.
Yes.
Mr. Fast. Is Mr. Fast still with us?
I think he may have left.
Madame Gill?
Oui.
Mr. Johns?
Yes. Yes.
So 10 yeas, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Arnold, you wanted to raise an issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, from my calculations, it looks like after this Thursday's meeting, we would still require 3 more meetings on Pacific salmon in order to meet the study requirements, but we can confirm that offline as well.
Okay, what I'll do is I will ask the clerk to check back to see exactly how many meetings we had and report back to the committee. We've got time. If it's deemed to be only 5 up to that Thursday, we still know that we have to have 1 more at least. But like I said earlier, we're not handcuffed as such to just 6 meetings. We can extend it beyond that if we find it necessary. So Nancy, if you would check into that for us when we come back, or report to committee on Thursday, the exact intent of the motion, if we've met how many days we've actually dedicated to specific Pacific salmon, not specific.
So we already had 1 meeting with the officials. That was mostly on the big bar. Then 2 meetings on the big bar, including today. Tomorrow will be a meeting on Pacific salmon more at large. And at the end of that meeting, a time will be taken in camera so that you can suggest drafting instructions to the analyst. And then after that, on the big bar, because the big bar, according to the motion, requires a interim report before the final report. And then back in August to witnesses on Pacific Salmon. And then because there is no official limitation for meetings on Pacific Salmon, it can be more than that. It can be more than 2, it can be more than 3. The committee technically said at least 6 meetings, but no maximum.
Okay, but I think for the committee, Nancy, we'd like to know at that time how many meetings we have dedicated to Pacific salmon. So as we would know if we've had 5, if we had 6, or we had 4, whatever the number is, just so as the committee knows where we're to, and if there are any committee meetings still left to be scheduled after that time frame, we can deal with that then at that point.
So I'm sorry, the sound is a bit bad for me right now, but what I hear and understand from the question is, because you come really cut when I hear, is that there will be witnesses on Pacific Salmon Thursday, then 2 more in August. Then we do not have dates in September.
No.
The motion adopted by the House is that the committee can meet virtually until September 21st, but the committee has not adopted specific details to meet in September at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, I suggest we move forward with knowing that we're going to have 2 more meetings as Pacific Salmon, maybe more, but at least we have time now to get in our witness list so as the clerk can get in touch with those witnesses and have them lined up for those dates as well. So again, if there's no other committee business, hearing nothing, I thank everyone for your participation today. Yes, Nancy.
If I can add, sorry, so there's a bit of delay again because of my technical issues. To answer Mr. Morrissey, who asked if we still add witnesses, I still have witnesses for most parties, but some parties are running low. So I suggest that, for example, the Bloc and the Liberals are running low. And if they want to discuss with you suggesting more witnesses, then it could be discussed. Because some parties still have a lot of witnesses and some other parties have a lot less.
Okay, you were broken up a bit in what you were saying, Nancy, but I think it was encouraging members, if they still know of any witnesses that they would like to see appear before committee, by all means, please send them in to the clerk as soon as possible so they can start making contact with those individuals and setting them up on the given days that they're available. So hearing nothing else, I'll thank everybody for their participation today. We'll see you all hopefully here and well on Thursday.